Goku Makaimura Kai is known here in the United States as Ultimate Ghosts N Goblins Revision, but sadly was never released anywhere outside of Japan. So what's different about this version of Ultimate Ghosts N Goblins? Well, a good bit actually. Kai includes the revised version as well as the original Ultimate Ghosts N Goblins on the same disc. The revision takes the game back to the series' roots, where Arthur, the game's protagonist, doesn't need to collect a ton of rings in order to fight the final boss and get the true ending. Instead, it goes back to making the player beat the game twice in order to fight the true final battle and save the Princess Prin. Also gone is Arthur being able to take more than 2 hits before a death, and he no longer spawns near where he died. He either spawns at the beginning of the stage or the middle after a checkpoint. This version also fixes some balancing issues that the original had, and limits the amount of continues available to the player. Saves can also be made at the end of each stage, so a limit in continues is not really a big deal for people who want to put the game down and come back to it later without losing progress. These saves keep track of everything like armor, weapon, shield, magic power-up, lives, and continues. So, with all that stuff out of the way, let's dive into the mechanics of the gameplay and see if it's any good or not. The game starts off in a haunted forest, and immediately the player is greeted by a swarm of enemies like ghosts, undead birds, and creepy specter hands that try to grab him. Lots of spooky locales and tons of enemies await the hero during the journey ahead, and everything is wanting to end Arthur in the worst way. Every stage is filled with lots of platforming, and this must be done while there are infinitely spawning enemies just about everywhere. Thankfully, Arthur has plenty of weapons, magic, armor, and shields to help him out. Weapons come in the flavor of lances, knives, crossbows, bombs, vials of explosives, scythes, whips, and the swallow blade. These weapons range from great to absolute trash, in my opinion. There are so many of the weapons that are so bad that I would straight up reload my game if I happened to get one of them. The knife is still my go-to weapon in these games after all these years. There are also power-ups that are blue and red that can be picked up to make these weapons stronger and increase some of their ranges. These only last until Arthur takes a hit though, so sometimes that isn't a very long time. He can also pick up a few different armor types. His normal knight armor returns as his default, and the other armors include the warrior armor, emperor armor, cursed armor, dark armor, and angelic armor. Each one is different, with the warrior and emperor armor powering up Arthur's magic range power or effect. The cursed armor can either make Arthur very agile or make him seem heavy, and thus making platforming harder, and it also takes away his ability to use magic. The angelic armor gives him the ability to fly, and the dark armor raises agility and gives both the red and blue power upgrades the whole time in its use. These armors only last for 1 hit, so absolute care needs to be taken at all times to keep Arthur at his most powerful. Magic power-ups can change how easy or hard the game is really quickly. Some can cause explosions around Arthur, slow down or even stop time, unlock seals that are located throughout the stages that can lead to lots of items, or even do something shitty like let Arthur drop a rock out of his hands. These are just a few examples of the magic that can be found throughout the game. There are also different shields that can be found that can block projectiles, and one of them can even give Arthur the ability to fly for a short amount of time. Most of these can only block a limited amount of hits before breaking, so they won't last forever. Arthur thankfully has retained some abilities from the old games too, like being able to throw projectiles in multiple directions and being able to double jump. Some of the enemies in this game include zombies, spiders, minotaurs, Venus flytraps, wraiths, skeletons, worms, bats, fish, dragons, and demons. These range from mild threats to absolute bastards that might have you cursing loudly often. Some enemies like the fish just piss me off to no end, when I would be making a jump and they would just grab me in midair, weighing me down and making me fall to my death. Things like this happen often, so if you're easily frustrated, this might not be a fun time for you. No enemy in the game should be taken lightly, because all it takes is 2 hits to make Arthur nothing more than a skeleton. The stages in the game are every bit as much of a threat to him as the enemies are, and there are plenty of pits, spikes, traps, crumbling bridges, and toxic pools that he is going to have to watch out for. There are even magicians and witches' cauldrons that can turn Arthur into different sizes, or even burly women, a grasshopper, or even a skeleton. These effects don't last super long, but they are extremely annoying at times. Arthur not being able to control his jump after he makes one can also be pretty frustrating to newcomers, or those getting used to enemy placements and stage layouts. Each level has 2 stages with a mini-boss at the end of each stage. Then a level boss must be fought in order to obtain a key to continue to the next level. These mini-bosses and bosses are all very unique from one another, and most of them are a lot of fun to fight. The graphics are really good for the PSP, and it's interesting to see this series using 3D models. I own a copy of this on the PSP, but I'm using emulation here for video capture, and I have the models upscaled so things will look much cleaner than the PSP's standard resolution. The animations in the game are really smooth, and everything runs really well, even when there's a lot going on screen. The backgrounds can have some really bad looking textures here and there, but it wasn't anything I was really paying attention to. This is a handheld game after all, and without the increased resolution, I never even would have noticed that stuff in the first place. The sounds and music are great. The game keeps the music very much in the vein of the old titles, while even including the main theme from the series, but the only difference is this time the music is orchestral. I really enjoyed the music, and that's an important thing because with a difficult game like this, sometimes you'll be listening to the same song for a while until you reach a new area. The sounds are also very much the same as earlier titles in the series, and so I have no complaints here. So, would I recommend this version of Ultimate Ghosts N Goblins? Hell yes I would. In my eyes, this is the definitive version of the game, and the revision just makes it way more fun for me. Not having to worry about collecting rings, managing magic points, or backtracking just makes me like this so much more. Don't get me wrong, I love Ultimate Ghosts N Goblins, but after playing Kai, I just don't really want to go back. So if you're a fan of the Ghosts N Goblin games, then you really can't go wrong playing this title. It has excellent level design, and plenty of gameplay to sink your teeth into. This game is still reasonably priced and can be purchased digitally from the Japanese PSN store if you have a Japanese PlayStation account, to be played on either the Vita or the PlayStation TV. So look this game up and give it a shot. A lot of people don't seem to know it even exists, so I'm helping to spread the word.